So, hello again. Not sure if the people outside can also hear me and want to join us in the meeting room for the final plenary. But in any case, we will start now because some of us, including myself, need to get the plane. Sorry for that, but we will start definitely now. Not sure what your perception was of the last 2 days, but for me it was personally a great event because of a few reasons. And if my, okay, this was brought in. For a few reasons. So the first thing is, I think, quite obvious. We are all empowered by data. So why are we here? We like data, we need data, we want to sell data, or we want to buy data for any reason. So everyone is here to talk about data. And data spaces is about trust. So we come together here, meet together, want to share data, want to use data, but not at all cost. We don't want to use the classy way to just use data without providing any revenue, for example, or at least asking the data sources. We want to be driven by trust in the data spaces. And what, for me, was really a game changer this time is that I feel that this community is very much growing together and not staying on their separated islands. We see that business opportunities come up in data spaces. People talk about business, and I can remember a few years ago when you said marketplace in a data space conference, you were just, I don't know, people would not have talked to you anymore. And I see today that really the market perspective, because it's essential. So any solution needs a market, any solution needs someone who pays for it, and this cannot be forever the taxpayer. So I'm very happy that we had a few sessions this symposium who really tackled the most important thing next to the technical foundation, I would say. It's the business and how we can make business in data spaces, with data spaces. And so I personally want to thank all of you that we built really the stage together, all of us, and everyone contributed to the technical foundations that we can now use to create impact, create value from data spaces. And I'm very happy that today we have a great keynote speaker team who will show a kind of stack that the future of data spaces may need to consider. And we will start with Emma from ECO Association. She will focus on Aura, so the cloud edge infrastructure. Robert unfortunately needed to cancel his keynote because of technical problems with the plane. I think they did not use data spaces for predictive maintenance, but maybe they can do it in the future. He wanted to represent the industrial AI model providers who would then build on the cloud infrastructure to really create AI models that can be used by, for example, Synera. With Mark, we have him here today. They use agents for co-engineering, I would say. And then the last real keynote speaker, I would say, is Mehmet. He will demonstrate that it's not only about setting standards, but you can also do standardization and in the same organization create a business model that is viable and creates impact in the world. So it's not about standards, it's standards plus business ideas that create value and impact. And last but not least, Boris will close today, and he will summarize, on the one hand, what we have achieved within the data spaces in the last years, but much more essential, he will give an outlook on what will happen next. And I don't want to say anything about it. but I really want to welcome warmly Emma here on stage. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi guys, I'm really happy to be joining you here today. Maybe let me start by briefly introducing myself. My name is Emma. I work on behalf of the Eco Association of the Internet Industry, and with this industry we have been an integral part of the digital space now for over 30 years. We were born in 1995, almost as old as I am, and I would say with our over 1,000 members from over 70 countries, we are working at the intersection of technology, policy, and also market adoption. And I think one thing that is really clear and is also in our DNA is collaboration, because all the challenges we are facing here in Europe and beyond, I'm pretty sure that no one can tackle them alone. So we are here to actually also shape together the future with you guys, and that's why we also engage in a lot of initiatives and also innovation projects. And today I would like to introduce to you the Aura initiative. Maybe some of you already heard from the initiative, maybe not. And also one of the open source projects inside of this Aura initiative that's called Spaces. Let me check. Here we go. So I will try to explain it in a non-technical way. So just think back to the early days of like mobile phones, right? I think even I remember when I crossed border back in the time everything broke down, right? You needed a new SIM card, you needed a new contract, you had to understand new rules that you had to follow, so your connectivity kind of stopped at the edge of your country, right? And then roaming changed everything in that sense. Suddenly your phone just connected, right? So anywhere in Europe. So the network adapted to you and not the other way around, and borders didn't really matter anymore. Today, I would say cloud still feels like a pre-roaming era, right? We still have incompatible platforms, we have vendor lock-in challenges that we are facing, we have complex contracts, services that really stop at borders and are not flowing across them. And we, with Aura, with the initiative, we believe that cloud roaming is the next big leap. So we want to have a future where services connect anywhere in Europe automatically, right? So Europe where becomes one seamless digital space. So that's the idea. Just imagine I'm driving from Germany to Spain with an autonomous driving vehicle. And the moment I cross the border, my car, the vehicle, will lose access to the edge infrastructure it was connected to, right? Or maybe some low latency cloud services may no longer be available, and also critical functions such as navigation or AI analytics may degrade or even fail. And I think that's quite dangerous, and also, in my personal perspective, quite unnecessary, right? So the idea is to really build with cloud roaming the vision that a vehicle, in this example, really remains continuously connected, right? So the workloads automatically shift to a trusted, let's say, Spanish edge node. Low latency compute follows the car across borders, so you get the point, right? So the idea is, with Aura, to actually build exactly this technical foundation without trying to be too technical here. And you might think, okay, Aura, but how is this organized? Like, how can this scale across Europe? So with Aura, I think it's already 2.5 years old. It's one IPCEI, an important project of common European interest, where the challenge was not identified just in one country, but in many countries. And we have now the commitment of 12 EU member states that are actually working together with over 120 national projects with a total investment of 8 billion euros, where we jointly want to make the vision of cloud roaming reality, right? But Aura, of course, is not just a funding framework or a collection of projects, but we, of course, also have the idea how to put this into a vision. And the idea is, with Aura, to bring together multiple cloud and edge providers across Europe and connect them in a so-called multi-provider cloud edge continuum. So a continuum where services can move, scale, and adapt across borders, because the underlying architecture, and that's important, is not duplicated, it's shared, right? So that's the idea. So with Aura, we introduce a common operating model that defines how providers collaborate, how workloads can move, and of course, how resources can also be discovered and trust can be established across different actors. So this is not centralization, of course, but it's federation at scale, right? So a Europe where different providers stay independent, but still become interoperable through shared rules and shared interfaces. And this federated model is not just an abstract theory or idea, right? It directly reflects, I would say, a broader shift that we are already all experiencing. Because I think we all observe that across Europe and also beyond, of course, we are moving from a world of isolated cloud silos, right, into a world of highly distributed, intelligent, and adaptive cloud edge meshes, right? So we are witnessing the structural shift in how digital infrastructure is designed, right? Traditional cloud was centralized, it's really predictable, but also rigid. Then edge computing came up and emerged to bring also compute closer to the users. But in the end, without federation, we create also new silos. So with this next generation continuum that we are building with Aura, we want to bring both worlds together, so cloud and edge, so it becomes one adaptive system, and also orchestration becomes dynamic, right? So we are all witnessing in the structural shift, but of course, to make this continuum work at scale, we also need common rules and also some shared operational mechanisms, right? And I brought one example or a rough overview of a federated ecosystem, where I think it makes really clear if we want to scale federation or federated ecosystems, we have to focus on two complementary pillars. And I think it was already mentioned today many times. We have first the governance side and we have the operations side, right? On the governance side, we of course have to clearly define the scope, like who is working together, which problem are we solving, what the common rules, and so on. And on the operations side, we have to understand also how a federation can actually work in practice, right? So this includes topics such as federated identity and access management, trusted chains, and so on. And with FATSIS as one project under the Aura initiative that is led by the Eco Association, we are supporting on both pillars, one, the governance and also the operations side. And let me just quickly also jump into concrete deliverables in our project. So on the governance side, something that I think is not really seen as this important at the moment, but I can already promise you it's going to be really important for every one of us, is the SLA topic, right? The quality of service. So we last year, just recently in November last year, published a first version of a multi-provider SLA governance framework. And with this framework, we are harmonizing SLAs across European providers to enable a bundled provision of services across multiple actors. And I think this is also everywhere important where you work with like different service providers, because especially for the users, it's really, really difficult at some point to understand like which quality of service do we have here and there, and how is this actually everything in a supply chain working together, because in the end, the client just wants like a perfect running service that they are offering to their clients, right? And additionally, we also published an SLA taxonomy. I think this is also really important because we also identified that providers often use slightly different terminology, which makes it quite difficult for users to understand and compare services. And everything is published in our open source repository at the Eclipse Foundation in our project XFSC. And we are right now working on putting these SLAs into machine-readable SLA templates, so we can also support automation in the future with that. So probably also for data spaces, at some point it might get interesting. Just thinking if data connector can also be seen as a cloud service, and of course there, when you get in a more commercial use, you also have to understand quality of service also for a data connector, right? So And on the other side, one other point I want to take out of this slide is that we are developing, and I think this is something important also if you want to adopt and scale, we are developing open and vendor-neutral, ready-to-use blueprints that make it easier to connect systems and also build federated ecosystems across different platforms. Because we understood from the last years in our experience that there's a lot of open source available, but in the end it's really difficult for people to understand how to orchestrate all of these services, so in the end they have some functionalities. So you can see these blueprints as kind of a puzzle manual, right? So it doesn't build the puzzle for you, but it shows you exactly how to put all the pieces together. So in the end, the systems talk with each other. And I want to stop with one important thing, and I think this is something that I also had already a lot of discussions today with a lot of people. I heard already on stage as well, people talking about it. And I think also concerning data spaces, but also federated ecosystems, something that's really important and where we should all put a little bit more focus and effort into, from my perspective, is to really show added value for companies at a really early stage already to get their buy-in, right? Because in the end, we heard it already many times, it's not a technical thing, you know, also data spaces, it's not a technical challenge. We also have to understand also how we can support and get commitment by the companies. And what we do in FATSIS is we are also collaborating with partners. For example, last year we had a fruitful collaboration with Airbus as one project as one partner under the Aura initiative. And here I really learned from my experience in the last month that this is actually really not a technical challenge, because it was pretty easy to build some building blocks and to show the architecture and how this can work. But then you see the faces of the colleagues that were really lost. So I understood really early that it's not an IT integration exercise at all, but we actually have to show the transformative potential of federation early on. And that's why with Airbus we were working on focusing on the aircraft itself, treating it as a flying edge device, right? So a plane that is not just a vehicle, but is actually part of a digital ecosystem that securely exchanges data, but also services with partners, service providers, airlines, airports. So this was the idea behind it. And with this idea, we understood also the use cases that Airbus is interested in and how federated approaches can support these use cases. So, and this is how I want to end. I think it's really important that we all jointly work together on also supporting and understanding also the use cases better, and also to maybe consult them in, is the data space the right way, or is a federated approach the right way, or maybe even not, right? So just don't waste time if it's not even necessary for the use case itself. I just want to lastly invite you to our conference. So if you're interested in seeing more, also from Aura, but also we have a lot of political stakeholders in Berlin in June, you're warmly welcomed. We will have a lot of demonstrations. We have a parallel hackathon where we can also work together on on the federation architecture patterns and so on. So you're warmly welcomed, and thank you for your attention.
Yeah, thank you, Emma, for your great presentation about the infrastructure of the future, I would say. And users of this infrastructure may potentially be our next presenters. Sanera, Mark, thank you very much for having you. Thank you. Great applause.
Is it working already? Yes. No. So thank you very much, Tobias, actually for inviting me or us here. Very interested to talk here. So we are not conceptualizing data spaces or defining data spaces, but what we do with Sanera is we work on or act in data spaces. And I think somebody said today on the conference that the data space needs to go first, needs to be done first, and then we can think about AI. I would say we should start with using AI, adopting agentic AI already now, but of course I can fully confirm that the data space, a structured and regulated data space, is definitely the enabler for scaling agentic AI. So what we do at Sonera is we offer a platform with which you can build your own multi-agent systems, and we are focused fully on engineering. And by doing this, also today, also with the data we face today at the clients, we are able to speed up tremendously if we find the right use case. And then, of course, what hinders scaling today is that this one solution is not really transferable so easy to the next, because then it becomes, we need to check again, what's the data look like, how do we need to adapt, and how do we put this into regulations ourselves. We are focusing mainly on automotive, but we have clients all over the place. You see a few of them here, and I will show you some examples later on. Oh no, not this one. Oh, sorry, how can I go back? Here. So what we do is, or our why is basically, we see it in engineering. Engineering is under big pressure. We need to accelerate a lot. It's like the new benchmark is often 50% below the lead time we have today in engineering. And especially in Europe, we are reducing headcounts in the companies. So the engineers are under big pressure to do more with less time. So, and the reason why we are still slow sometimes is that a lot of time vanishes because we have very, very heterogeneous tool landscapes. So these tool landscapes built on solvers that are sometimes 20, 30 years old. The data that is still used is 20, 30 years old. It's 2D hand drawings that we sometimes have to deal with and act upon. And this is the first thing. Second thing is we are in a field that needs experts quite a lot, and we need teamwork. And in the teamwork, we have handovers, we have waiting times, and this is creating a deceleration of the whole process. So, and then plus engineering is so many different use cases. Every part is different, every question is different. So this is one reason why we cannot scale and accelerate right now. So our solution here is introducing AI agents. And with Sonera, you're able to create such AI agents for engineering. And that's what makes us unique. It's a special software that focuses fully on engineering. In general, an agent is always an LLM, a large language model, which is prompted. We can give it context, company knowledge, memory. Here we can already put in guidelines, rules, regulations, and so on. We can do that on that level already. And we give that agent a tool. And in our tool, often it's not just one tool, like Copilot, you might know, there it is Excel, it is Outlook, something like this. In our case, it's CAD software, it's simulation software, PLM tools, and the workflow around it. And today, we need to put a lot of effort in that workflow so that the agent does what it should and not something autonomous, which we cannot control. So next thing, if we create one agent, of course, next step would be, and this is what you can do, is build multi-agent systems. And then it becomes more powerful. The range these agent systems can work on becomes bigger, and the lead time we can reduce is even higher. So usually it looks like this. We have one supervisor on the top, and we have specific agents for the single tasks. So a design agent would get access to CAD tools, to CAD data. The simulation agent would get access to simulation tools like FEA, like CFD, and something like that, to solvers, to the data behind that. And a costing agent would access purchasing databases, supplier databases, or use costing tools. So this is the goal, what you want to do. And first step with Sonera is you would conceptualize your multi-agentic system. And next step is you would give or create the tools for the agents. So, and how, now where's the data in here? So, as I said, it's 3 layers that we do with Sonera. We create the agents, we create the workflows. In the workflows, we have to handle a lot of exceptions, a lot of, give the agents guidelines what to do, what not to do, how to handle data, what to access, and what not. And the tool landscape is what I said, is very heterogeneous, and we need to act on that and connect these tools into the workflows. By the way, we are the only ones that have partnerships with all these vendors in engineering and can connect all of these into one system. And all of them act on a data layer that is much more heterogeneous than the tools again. So it's from top to bottom, the task becomes more and more complex. What we see at clients, and now I'm getting into the data spaces and what gives us some problems. At clients, we often see a lack of access definition. So there's what the humans face as well. I mean, you're the experts here. It's not clear what can access what. So what we need is an agent identity on the one hand that gets roles and rights to act on a data space. Then we face data cares. As I said, it's sometimes 2D drawings that come from the past that are handwritten. What we need is data products that do versioning, that have a versioning, metadata in general, quality, maturity, and so on. So instead, what we do today is we help the clients clean up these data. So we build agents and workflows that compare data products and bring them into some structure. And then we have single manual approvals, and what we need instead is a clear policy connected to the data so that the agents have rules and standards they can follow. So what can we do with this? If we have an agent with identity and rights, we don't have to program all the things into our workflows. So the access and execution and change abilities are, let's say, hard-coded into the data space. If we get, same thing with policies, if we have machine-readable policies for the agents, they know what to do and what they are allowed to do. Engineering data products, as I said, is if we have a versioning and a clear catalog what this data is, it makes the creation of these agent systems much simpler. Then, if we want in the future accelerate even more, get the efficiency right, then we need to have a trace for that the agent leaves in the data space so that we can still see what has been done so far. And finally, triggers in the data space that call agentic systems instead of today, where always a human needs to start an agent to work. And then what I need to say, as I said it at the beginning, we can create a great value today, but we need to enable flexibility. And this becomes a chain reaction if we start in the data. So today, let me start here from the bottom. Today, we act on unstructured heterogeneous data, and this means we have many different tools, many different data formats. We need to care for this in the workflows. So every workflow is unique, specific, needs to handle exceptions, needs to have some rules implemented. And then we still get to value. Multi-agentic systems do the work autonomously, but the scaling is not possible because we need to adapt that every time. In the future, the chain reaction looks like this. If this is mature, structured with rules and regulations in the data space, then everything on top becomes much easier. The workflows are flexible, the agents are flexible, and this will be the key to scaling in the future. So now, this was much about one company. In the future, I think what is already visionary between OEMs and tier ones is they want to let agents maybe negotiate. And one really successful use case from us are RFQ agents. In one sentence, tier ones losing deals today because they are too slow in the very early phase answering an RFQ. We have set up at many tier ones RFQ agent systems that answer an RFQ in hours instead of weeks. And that's reliable. It works already today. And tier ones improving their win rates. Now, the OEMs, on the other hand, are doing the same thing with call for tender. So, and now it's 2 agentic systems in 2 companies. The future would be these 2 are brought together, and there, I think as well, we need to handle these rules and regulations in the data space, and a common approach to that. So here's a little video. I don't know how much time I still have left. I'm a bit over. It's fine. So here's what we do today. We have rules and boundaries. We prompt it today. We prompt it, and we put it into the workflow. If we want to make it really sure and reliable, then it's in the workflow, not only in the prompt, I have to say. So, but this is what I just said, is that these agents, and this is a view into our software, these agents and these systems need to be configured for every use case again. And then the transfer is sometimes simple, but sometimes it needs to be rethought again. A regulated data space would be the key to scale. The final result is such a kind of a ChatGPT interface. Just to give you an idea of what it looks like, it's a bit not enough time to go into deep, is what happens here is you talk to it like ChatGPT, but in the background it accesses the data, engineering data, models, CAD models, FEA models, and so on, and uses the tools of the engineers that they use today. And then there's also a point in this video where the agent asks for permission to go on. So this is done today. So I think also here again, much more flexibility and potential for scaling if this is natively done and regulated in the data space. Okay, I think to speed up again a bit, everything these agents do is still, you can still follow up, you can see what has been done, so that's not something in the back. So here's the trace, right? But to my point of view, it would be much more reliable, much more robust if also this trace is put and tracked in the data space directly. All right, so I'll finish. My main message today would be these numbers we present here with the clients, they are reality today, so we should not wait, I think, to start with agentic AI in engineering, but definitely one key to scale this is the data space behind that.
Yeah, thank you, Mark, for this great example of some agentic use of data spaces. And now we will have Mehmet, who will show us how their company contributed to EDC, right? And at the same time build a business on it. So, thank you, Mehmet.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Just checking if the mic is on. Hi, everyone. Before talking about how we contributed to the EDC and that which we've been talking about a lot at this conference, I wanted to start by sharing a few words on what I personally consider to be one of the most important reasons why I stand here today. We stand at a critical turning point in shared human history, with multiple futures to choose from. One future relentlessly standardizes every aspect of life: attention, emotion, creativity, and connection, generalizing people into data points, optimizing for profit and control, eroding the dignity and depth that makes existence truly meaningful. The other future is one of profound solidarity, a resilient, living convergence of diverse minds, cultures, and ways of knowing that protect irreplaceable social values. Those that nurture genuine trust and weave them into a unified intelligence that amplifies human connection. So we must ask ourselves, with urgency and heart? Are we praising technological adaptations, allowing the quiet devastation of what makes us human? Or are we courageously investing in a future where technology serves life, dignity, and unbreakable bonds between us? Now, what am I doing here? 10 years ago, I was a student, a fellow researcher at what is called the Earth Institute, affiliate with Columbia University in New York. And I had looked into agriculture, public health, early childhood development, and many of these areas. And what struck me was that we had a true lack of people that mastered technology, that would know where and when to apply which tools in order to truly advance human progress that would serve all of us. It was during this time when I felt and decided that I wanted to become one of those people that would actually ask, how can we change this? How can we do something about it? And so I decided to ask effectively a number of people in thus far overlooked, underrated places of this world, Tunisia, Libya, Cameroon, where I myself had spent time living and studying, if they wanted to join a crew of problem solvers, critical minds, thinkers, to take on this challenge and to come together as problem solvers. And it turns out that today, these problem solvers, these critical minds, had actually come together in what is known as Think It, and I have two of them sitting here right now. It turns out that some of the most brilliant minds that today are known here as the core committers to the EDC, the framework that makes sovereign data sharing, one of the frameworks that makes sovereign data sharing possible, are part of this crew. And it was therefore my intention, and is my intention today, to also share about these aspects that make, for us, the true reason and promise of data sharing worthwhile pursuing. And so, it's not been an easy journey. These last couple of years have been shaped by understanding the principles and underlying philosophies of this which today gathers all of us together, where we understood this is something really powerful. It's something incredibly powerful if we can truly come together, if we can trust, and if we can join as communities. It will be powerless if we fail to trust, if we fail to come together as humans, as societies, because what will happen is that we will see competitive sandboxes dispersed and scattered that are not able to base the power of this promise on trust and true collaboration. And so we have worked across industries in automotive, in mobility, logistics. We were part of one of the first teams that would essentially see whether we can use this technology to reduce CO2 emissions, whether we can move parcels from A to B in better ways, in more effective ways, in efficient ways. We would not make a difference between who we would work with. We would not take sides, because for us it's been of utmost importance to actually ask, how can we connect over this and use the tool in effective ways? And so this journey of venturing out has been an interesting one that came with many learnings. And I'm also glad to say today that we've had examples such as working in the media industry, where we were able to, with a changing landscape, with a changing industry, where we now see media companies struggling big time, and some of the participants asked me to share about that, with a changing world where humans are more and more distracted, lack of attention, those organizations, journalists, are struggling to get their stories across. Revenues are going down. Costs are going up. Why? Because AI is also adding to deep fakes, fake stories that need verifying, that need more hours of work. And so this is one of the examples where we genuinely see organizations composed of people coming together for the first time, perhaps, saying we need to collaborate, because otherwise we will die out. We are the part of the forest that cannot sustain itself anymore in this changing world. And so there we have experienced clear value that is created by having multiple organizations share data around the verification of stories, of images, because it served everybody, because it created win-win-wins. And we were also part of this journey as one of the, I believe, first examples of also using shared data to enhance models, of model fine-tuning, to show that when we collaborate, when we come together, and when we join forces, ultimately, we're all better off through win-win-wins. Now, something that has also been part of this symposium has been the question, when will we see the baby walk? And as a father, the only analogy that I could think of is that when I observed my daughter crawling as a baby, I observed her experimenting with pulling herself up, playing around, trying to find her balance, her stability. And eventually, when the day came where she first pushed herself up and walked, it was like magic. Why am I taking this analogy? Because I believe that many of us have worked relentlessly on multiple experiments. We've pushed ourselves up, we've played around with bricks. We're all tired of not seeing true connection and true momentum picking up in that space. And yet I will tell you that the moment when the baby stands up and walks, it will feel like magic, but it is possible. And this is why I believe so much in the power of the promise and the principles and the philosophies that go with data spaces. But we must not forget why we do what we do. At the end of the day, it's through the crawling and through failure that we build true success. And trust, and I think this is an important lesson that many of us can relate to, is built through shared experience. It's actually, when I look at the ecosystem, it's the people that have walked together, that have experimented together, that have lived through these experiments, that in fact built the type of trust that will get somebody to a point to say, I today trust, and hence I will share of me, I will share of mine without knowing whether and what I will get in return. There was this analogy shared at this symposium that true ecosystems, I think this was part of the opening, true ecosystems rely on trees sending nutrients without knowing that when the time comes for them to receive nutrients, they will also receive. And this is a very important principle without which we will not be able to face this moment. And so moving from individual stewarding, from individual ships to true collective movement is what I'm talking about. Because with the promise and the movement and the changes of AI, we're virtually able to turn any physical asset into a virtual replica, a digital twin, a representation. This is immense power that is dawning upon us. And it is probably one of the last moments and times where we as people can make a conscious choice around how we want to gather, bring together human knowledge, how we want to nourish it, and how we want to share it with one another. Also during a time when it is unclear how and how much AI and agentic systems will otherwise access data without consciousness. It is upon us to define those sets, and this is expressed in many of the frameworks and many of the principles that we are gathering around during this symposium to make exactly that choice. And how will we choose to live together? I've had a conversation today with one of the participants sharing with me about their teenage son, about how difficult it seems to have become for them to truly trust one another in school, to truly spend time together through shared experience. it's through a lack of attention and crisis that we're observing as well, and mental health. And so, again, the technology is a tool. How we'll choose it is completely upon us. And that brings me to the point of also expressing a belief and also a intention that we as a team have chosen to commit to. And that is to continue in the same way as we have approached the last couple of years of focusing on the open source community and on focusing on the principles that underlie the EDC, to launch a venture that is common, that is open source, that is sovereign by default, and that will be owned by the stewards that are building it, which is to say that it is meant to be protected as well against short-term profiteering, because we believe that infrastructure of the commons is what we also as the people, as many people of Europe, but of the world as well, can actually form and bring together. And so, how could that look like? Well, what's clear is that the promise and the potential of the technology is there. We've seen how it can make a real difference. But if we're not working together to essentially build and bring out the building blocks that constitute this technology in ways where our new generation, builders, open source committers, contributors, entrepreneurs, can actually use them to build upon them, we will not see the effectiveness of the apps that we so wishfully are looking to deploy and use. And just earlier, and I like the contribution on agentic workflows. This is an example of somebody in our community that is also using agentic workflows. This is an example of exactly the type of applications that we will see emerge. And again, what are the underlying principles that govern the data that will go into them? We can use this in very powerful ways. And we can also use this to unconsciously move in ways where we no longer know what is happening in a black box. And so we believe that if we can focus as a collective on venturing together, on deploying principles of entrepreneurship, of focusing on what truly creates value for a user, yes, for a customer, yes, but also for a citizen, part of society, then we will succeed. When anyone can build, run, and extend in that same fashion, then we will see a shift. And I have a few lessons, since I was asked as well to answer the question of what can we do as a community? How can we think about the next steps? One, this is the moment to activate your entrepreneurial heart. This is the moment to activate the people that you know, whether that's in business schools, whether that is visionaries that want to see a new world, that want to solve a problem. And when activating those, what I would say is try to find those that are deeply passionate about what they do, that are deeply passionate about solving a specific problem. We don't need people being too passionate about a specific technology. We don't need people being too passionate about finding a problem for a solution that they are in love with. And I say this as well as a representative of a team that has been advancing one of the technologies and solutions. Another lesson would be pick up the phone and talk to those that will be using that which you're going to build. I've heard the term SME at the symposium shared a lot, and yet when I asked people and asked myself, how much time did we actually spend sitting down with somebody working in an SME, accompanying them throughout their day, trying to understand their reality, why they're trying to do what they do, why they show up to work, what matters for them most. If we cannot answer that question, if we cannot understand the reality, we will not talk about adoption. So talk to real people using real tools. Focus on problems that actually keep people up at night. What does that mean? If you're inventing problems and are trying to choose solutions that are not making a dime in a day of somebody, They will not pay for this because they do not see value in it. This is a very basic principle that if we follow it and if we can put attention on it, we will actually get to a point where we realize why people today would be in need of our support, whether that's as enablers, as core component offerers, app providers, etc. And lastly, and I think I said that already, forget the tech. At least for a moment, forget the tech. Try to look at the problem in a sober, objective way and really take the time to investigate the problem. And I know that in nowadays world, it's really difficult for many of us to read a book from A to Z. It's really difficult for many of us to actually sit down with 50 people and study the problem that is haunting them. But this is what's meant by forget the tech and focus on the people and the problem. And so this is what I would leave you with in terms of the tips. Why does that matter again? Because entrepreneurship and venturing is incredible and is part of our journey and the journey that I have been on for the last nearly 10 years. And if we are able to solve problems, we can make a change. But before putting our foot in a direction of entrepreneurship, we should ask ourselves, why? Why are we doing this? And lastly, I will say that there are those today that count on us to get this right. There are those today that actually look at a world that could become incredibly abundant, more aware through interconnections and using technology in conscious ways, and they will learn from us and the example that we are setting today. They will grow up with the principles of being builders, of entrepreneurs, of asking, why do we do what we do? What are the principles and the values? What type of society are we building? And so I want to finish by saying, I'm choosing tomorrow today. And I invite you to do the same. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mehmet. I was not expecting this kind of motivational keynote, to be honest. It was really impressive and really motivates myself to further continue the work on data spaces because they have purpose and they have an impact if we all work together. And yeah, now it's an honor to introduce the last speaker of this symposium. Boris, please.
Thanks, Tobias. Thank you, Tobias. Mic is on. Excellent. Yes, 2 intensive days are coming to an end, right? And I don't know how you feel, so I wanted to share at least how I feel. And it's a it's a weird combination because when I want to describe how I'm feeling, it's of course motivated, excited, inspired, tired as well. But of course, I'm truly looking forward to the upcoming steps because, as also in the last years, this was a big step forward, I believe. And I don't want to keep you for too long, but perhaps once more look a little bit at what has happened over the last year, last months, last weeks, perhaps also last days. Then also once more share with you a little bit an outlook about what's upcoming. And then of course also try to find some closing remark on this event. If I reflect a little bit what I've seen over these last 2 days and compare that also with the journey that we have all been going together over the last years, I think we can definitely observe that there is an increasing majority in our community. And that is always easily said, but it goes down into, I think, many dimensions. First of all, there is increasing maturity when we talk about, let's say, from a conceptual point of view, right? When I remember the first big events that we have on data spaces, I mean, all kinds of people came together and talked about hundreds of different things, and not all of them were really related to data spaces. So that has changed. So I think we have found common ground, and that is also something that we can then observe, let's say, in the richness, also in the contribution of the individual presentations, plenaries, and so on. And I'm not saying, let's say, that in the past, 5 years ago, that was all too fluffy or so, but it shows, let's say, that the community and what we are talking about gets more concrete, and that is usually a good thing. I mentioned yesterday that we support that from the Data Space Support Center through the blueprint. Also, for example, with a maturity report that came out yesterday as well. So there is a lot of, let's say, increase in conceptual maturity. But then also, it goes down to the technical dimension. Compared to the last year even, I think the technical discussions are way more to the point. I also like that they are now more and more moving towards, let's say, industrialized scaling perspectives. So the question is not so much about, does it really work? Or is it just a damn research or students project? No, right now the discussions are more about, we want to scale this, we need to get down entry barriers for the use of technology, and this needs to be industrialized to be consumed in the easiest way possible. And that's really great. Furthermore, the next dimension in terms of maturity, I believe, is the business viability. And that is also something related to what I said earlier, that the discussions are more towards, well, okay, there is a certain value that we want to capture. How can we distribute the value fairly between the participants? Also, it has been addressed earlier on that we first need to invest and then basically capture the value later on. And all these kind of thinking about, let's say, how we really succeed in economical terms, that is also something that, in my point of view, has matured significantly over the last year already. So that was one observation that I wanted to share. Another one is, let's say, that the community as such, so our group, is still, of course, growing, right? And what I also would like to share is, let's say, that I understand that we have a record in participation this year. So there were 1,200 unique registrations, and this is really a huge step forward. It's like not like 5% more. It's really, I think, like in the 40 or 50% range. So that is also, I think, worth an applause because you made that happen, right? So that's really a great thing. And also, what I also liked when talking about the community and the inspiration that we all got, I explicitly would like also to refer to the 3 presentations that we heard in this session. They were really rich in terms of content. They were really inspiring, and they were really also paving the way, in my point of view. And I talked to Tobias, and he said, well, that's the reason why he selected, let's say, the speakers, that they basically already paved the way what is probably upcoming. And that is something that I would also like to talk a little bit about. I said that yesterday. I think the first thing that we need to make sure is that we now really come into a stage where network effects are triggered, so that we embark into not only highly scaling use cases, but into use cases that make use of the data network effects. I said that yesterday. The more we use the data, the more value it can unfold, and that basically is non-linear because it's really exponential, and that basically relies on the network effect that is inherent in ecosystems. And I think that also in the discussions we've talked about evolutions and not doing everything at once, but we are now really at the point where this hockey stick curve can materialize. So that's definitely one thing. The other thing is also that we need to look at, let's say, business viability. And that is, of course, something that we also saw yesterday, by the way. And that is something that I, of course, don't want to forget to mention. The increasing maturity and, let's say, the excitement that I referred to earlier today was really, it was really tangible yesterday in the Data Space Awards ceremony. We had a great event. One of my key learnings actually is that we probably should also learn from that and serve beer and wine already in the main program in the morning. So because that was really a great atmosphere with truly deserved winners, and that basically, as I said, also told me that we are now really engaging into the stage where it's getting serious. So that's really great. And the next trajectory for future work that we would see then even more results when we meet in 1 year from now is in fact AI. And I particularly also liked the presentation that Mark Florian gave, because that is exactly, I think, the way to go, that we basically make use of data spaces as a tool to create relatively comprehensive representations of any sort of real-world object. So we move from digital shadows to relatively complete, comprehensive digital twins, which are then on top of that equipped, let's say, with the opportunities of agentic AI, right? And so in fact, as we also heard, let's say the to-be-built car can basically organize the production itself and so on and so forth. And this is something I believe that is the next step. It was great to see that it's already at the horizon, that it's already tangible, but I think this is really the way it will go. Right, so there's, as you can see, a lot of cool things ahead of us. And that brings me to, let's say, a point that is probably the most important part in such a closing speech, which is say thank you to those who made this happen. Because it's not something that just happens out of itself, right? There is hard work behind. And I'd like to point out in particular that a huge group of the DSSC consortium was really actively engaged in making this happen. We had, let's say, every Friday a call, and then calls in between with lots of people who really worked hard on that. And I think that's also worth an applause. So the DSSC team was really excellent, so give them a hand. Then next, of course, we are in beautiful Madrid, and of course this would not have been possible with the help of the Gaia X Hub here in Spain. So once more also, let's give them a hand, a big applause for the Gaia X Hub here in Spain. That is really great. And I should also not forget to mention the support by the European Commission. As you know, I mentioned that yesterday, that the Data Space Support Center is a funded project. So we, as European taxpayers, basically pay for it, and we got the money granted by the European Commission. But that's not the point that I wanted to make. Of course, we are very thankful about the grant that we got. But what I explicitly want to stress is, let's say, the personal commitment of the policy officers in the group of Ivo Vollmann and Björn Jurecki. I'm not sure Christina is still with us. Björn is also here, very good. And let's give them a hand, because, I mean, Christina, you are also together with Kuhn, for example, you are also, let's say, present in bi-weekly calls and really committed to the success of what we are doing here. And that is also nothing which you can usually expect, let's say, from policy office. So that's really great. However, so I mentioned a couple of organizations and also individuals, but I think it's always the case that these kind of events need to be carried by a few who really stand out, I would say, to make this happen. And I have 4 individuals, 4 people from our group that I want to explicitly mention individually. And that is, of course, Anna Bustragi. Not sure whether she is still here. There she is. Excellent. Then there is Francisca Rubio. She's also here. Paki, right? Then we have Antonia Custa. Is she still here? Not so sure, but where is she? Oh, over there. Antonia, excellent. And then, of course, Andreas Kemmbügler. Where is he? Where's Andreas? Oh, he's sitting over there. And really, I'd like to mention you explicitly because you were the 4 people who really carried it. I don't want to be injustice, let's say, to others. As I said, it's a great team exercise and team effort, but you were really the ones who made it happen. And I really, I have the highest, let's say, opinion of, let's say, also the fact that you stayed calm, and every time I tried to reach out, in particular to Andreas and Anna, that was really fantastic and a pleasure to work with you. Now, I'm almost at the end. I would like to ask all the session organizers to come to the stage after I've finished, because we will make a photo of all the session organizers. That was a task that I took from Andreas. I should not forget. But before we do that, I would like to close with a big thank you to all of you as the community, because that was mentioned also a couple of times. It's really the individuals that make it happen, and your true commitment. Many of you have been around for years, and I think this is the biggest success factor for our joint endeavor, that we stay committed, that we demonstrate passion to what we do, because then in the end we will succeed. Thank you very much for your commitment, for your passion. I'm really looking forward to continue working with you in the next month, years, and let's say all the activities that are upcoming. Thank you very much. Have a safe trip home. Thank you. Right, and now the session organizers, please come up front and let's have a nice photograph.
So thank you for your final closing words, Boris. Thanks a lot. But not only the session organizers, all organizers, please come on stage. And I see Helmut Vossmann here in the first row. So you're also, let's say, part of the team because you organized the agri-food session. Please come on stage.